Okay, we are live. So, welcome to Tamarah's Closet today. I am with a very special lady today whose story is very near and dear to my heart. She was born on the Fort Benning military base in 1954. Her father was a pilot. He flew helicopters and fixed wing planes. They lived in many different places, including Italy, which I think would be a wonderful place to live for a while. I just want to visit it. So she's well traveled, having gone to 11 different schools and received her BA and MA in English at Auburn University. And then she taught there for a while, as well as Kent State University and Itawamba Junior College. I hope I pronounced that
You
right.
did, you did.
Yeah, she's always been a very active person, loves hiking and traveling with her husband, which I believe has helped her in this journey with ovarian cancer. Jo Marsam is a survivor of 3 years now with this cancer, one that my mother did not survive. So I'm looking forward to hearing about her journey. And I want to go ahead and welcome Jo Marsam to Tamarah's Closet today and hear her journey, how she has stayed so resilient and positive through it all. Can you still hear and see me, Jo?
Yes, I can. I can.
Okay, wonderful. I'm just going to jump right in. I know that you moved around a lot and you were born on the Fort Benning military base. What was that like for you, and how do you feel it attributed to your strengths?
Well, one way I think it did is that when you move that much, you have to learn to be adaptable. And one thing that I tell people is I know a lot of people, they're frightened of new things and they're also frightened of speaking in front of people. But I said, you have to look at it that it's always the potential for new friends. I mean, and plus, being on military bases, most of the time we lived on the base, with the exception in Italy, we lived on the economy. And after my dad, when it was different back then when people went to war, like when my dad went to Vietnam, you moved off the military base. But a lot of times when you would go on these military bases, the same kids would keep showing up.
Right.
So you had friends that you'd see, and then you'd see them again in a few years.
Yeah.
So
Well, where was it? Was your household real rigid because of that? Rigid, rules, strict rules, and or is that just TV?
yeah, no, there were strict rules. There were certain there's certain things you knew, like the yes sir and the no ma'am, and you always answered the phone a certain way. You'd say, Colonel Rice's residence, Joe speaking. Can I help you, please? I mean, we had a set way of doing things,
Oh my
but then
goodness!
we had a lot of fun. I can remember as I wasn't just maybe a young teenager when they first walked on the moon and we were in Fort Rucker, Alabama. My dad came out there to get my younger brother and me and take us back in so that we could watch history. So there was, it was a good childhood.
Well, that's great. That's good to hear. Because you moved around a lot too, and even lived in Italy. Tell me about your experience in Italy, how that impacted your life, and how old would you have been then?
Okay, I went. We were living at Fort Sheridan, Illinois when I started third grade. So when my dad got orders to go to Vicenza, the base in Vicenza, we we had to go. They gave him like about a month. So then we went to visit his parents in Arkansas, and my parents put my brother and me in school. So then by December, when we arrived in Italy, we were on our third school for the year. So, and they had a Vicenza at that time, it was a big military base. Now, we lived on the economy. We lived in a 3-story apartment. And I do remember we would go out and catch the school bus, and it was totally different than it is here now. The older women, now this is in the 60s, the early 60s, they would be washing the clothes in the big in the big stone washers on the side of the road. And okay, I freely admit that many a time I would miss the school bus going my way, and I'd get down there and these older women would say, "You've got to cross the street to catch it on the way back." I also remember my younger brother and I, and this wouldn't happen in the States anymore, but we would just ride bicycles all over. I mean, all over in a foreign country. And I can't see any of us letting our children ride do that now in this day and age. But after my dad was there a year, in the middle of 4th grade, we moved to Verona, which was a smaller base and concentrated more on flying. And that was interesting going to school because we still had to catch the bus and everything. But they had built a school for K through 3, and 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. We went to school in an old shoe factory. They had modified an old shoe factory. So every day we'd go in, you know, it was sort of like you see on the TVs there, the big square building, and we'd go in there. And then once you were past 6th grade, all the 7th graders through 12th grade, they would go to the train station and they would catch a train 30 minutes and go to Vicenza and finish their school that way. But yeah, that didn't happen to us because when the year I was going to start 6th grade, so I was there for part of 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade, my dad got orders to go to Vietnam. So what we did then is we came back on a boat, the USS Constitution, and he got us settled in Paragould, Arkansas, near where his parents lived, and there were a lot of relatives. And when he had training at Fort Benning there, we went back with him, and then he went off to Vietnam.
Goodness.
For his first term.
So how long was he there?
Well, the first time he was there from basically December through November. He was shot in his helicopter. I'm very proud of my dad. At one time he was a member of the Robin Hood Squadron, but he also some American soldiers trapped. And my dad talked the people showed them how they could mount a night rescue. And they went in and they rescued all these soldiers. So my dad he got the Silver Star for his actions. And then, and about 3 Bronze Stars. He's got lots of medals, but he was shot, his helicopter, and he spent 6 months in Walter Reed. At that time, they wanted to amputate his arm, and he said, no. He said, don't amputate my arm. He was kind of a positive in that, but he came back from that, and he maintained his flying status.
Did he keep full use of his arm?
No, he did not keep full use, but he compensated for it. I mean, his arm after that, it went right through his elbow. So his arm was always bent like this, sort of bent. But he did, and he went back and had another tour. His second tour, he was on Westmoreland's staff. So he did that when I was in high school. And then after that, he came back. He was at Fort Rucker then, and he was the executive officer of the Cairns Air Force, or Cairns Air Force Field. So that was good.
And your mom was kind of the head of the household during all this, right?
Yes, she was. My dad kind of thought she let us get away with too much because it was the late 60s. My brother grew his hair out, and he goes, "Oh, you let him grow his hair out," you know. But my dad came back, and he ended up, it was sad, but he ended up being one of the ones who developed cancer from Agent Orange. So he passed away at a very early age at 53. But I thanked him too, because he always thought that I could do anything that a boy could do when I was growing up. I mean, if he was coaching Pony League, he would put me on first base and say, "Go ahead and throw it at her. She'll catch it." I mean, so even after he passed away, I thanked him, thank you, Dad, because you helped me grow up to be strong and independent. So
that's really great. So when you were doing all this traveling though, it must have been, wasn't it difficult leaving friends you had made each time and having to leave them, or?
it was, and then sometimes they'd leave you, but I have stayed friends with two of them, more not so much in elementary school, but in the middle school, junior high. Last summer we went and visited a friend from Montana. We had always stayed in touch, but I hadn't seen her since we were both 13. And I did this and with this other one I stayed in touch with, who lives in Houston, Texas. We're going to go see her this February. So I stay in touch with people. So you could consider that these are a couple people I've been 55 friends with 55 years plus. So
Wow. That is good, though. That's good that you've been able to do that, because you could credit it in your bio that moving around a lot is kind of attributes to your extroverted nature. What do you think all this traveling and it taught you about yourself?
Well, it's taught me that I am very open and accepting of other people's cultures. I mean, I would say you learn that, yeah, we in the United States are very, very blessed. I mean, if you go to some of these third world countries like Honduras, you learn that even the poor people here, they have so much more than the people in Honduras. When we moved to Honduras, people were waiting for our cardboard boxes so they could build a house. I mean, and here, yes, we do have homelessness and we do have cardboard box people who live in cardboard boxes, but it was much more prevalent in a third world country. Plus you also, plus you learn their food and their language and the music, and also you learn a lot of history.
Oh yeah. How long were you in Honduras?
2 years.
2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And did you make friends there too?
Yes, I did. I made friends there. One of them was the librarian at the school where I taught down there. I taught in a private elementary school down there, a bilingual school. And I always used to say, well, we came down here so I could meet Adele. And I've stayed in touch with her. And one of the young women who owned the school, I've stayed in touch with her. She now lives in Wisconsin. Her husband passed away at an early age. But it was different there because they did have public school, but all public schools ended at 6th grade. So there were a lot of private schools, both just in Spanish, but then there were 2 in San Pedro Sula where we lived that were bilingual. And I taught at the smaller one, Saran, which in Spanish translates to "they will be." So it's looking for a positive future for the children.
Oh, goodness. Well, how many languages do you speak?
Well, I just say I get by. I say bastante in Spanish, and in Italian I can get by. We're planning to go there again next summer, at the end of next summer. So I will start studying in January so that it sort of brings it back to the forefront of my memory. Because if you don't use your languages, you do forget them. And so, but it's like I tease, I say, yes, I can buy train tickets really well. But, and I can ask directions. I can get around, but I have to concentrate. That's what I generally try to look for, the things, the tourists, except they did laugh one time. Phil and I, we went to Sorrento and near Pompeii and the Isle of Capri. And we had a taxi driver taking us back to where we were staying. And he didn't want to take us all the way. He stopped and said, get out. And I said, no. And I was doing this in Italian. I couldn't do it right now, but I was doing it then. No, we paid for you to take us, so you've got to take us all the way. And he did.
Well, you met your husband in 1977, and you mentioned that you lived in several different states and, of course, Honduras. What took you and your husband to so many different places to live?
Well, the first time is we went up to Kent State, where I taught. I taught freshman English there. And I was also the director of the writing clinic, where we gave help to people who needed extra help with either writing essays or research papers. And I also taught remedial English, because a lot of students at that time were coming into the university, and you would have to start out with, my lesson was, a noun is a person, place, or thing. So you really went back to the basics, and it was getting them to write sentences and paragraphs. So we did that, and then after that we moved to Arkansas, where he farmed for a couple seasons with my dad. But then he took a job with Bluebell, the denim here in North Carolina, in Greensboro. And we moved to Tupelo, Mississippi, where his first job for Bluebell was with the Wrangler plant. And after that, we went to Louisiana, where he worked for Janssen. And then we went to Tennessee, where he worked to Red Cap. And then we went to Honduras, where they were setting up a plant. And then eventually we showed up here, which was just funny, but
Go ahead.
What were you gonna, no, well, I was going to say, it's funny because when we were in Tupelo and he would come here to Greensboro for meetings, he'd say, Jo, I really think you'd like Greensboro. And eventually at the end, we ended up in Greensboro. So
how long have you been here?
Since 96. That was when they started going. He was working in the health techs division. They started going outside the United States for sourcing, and they wanted somebody who could speak Spanish. So that's how we got up here. It's been very good for us. Our girls, when we came up here, one was in the 2nd grade and the other was in the 6th grade. So basically, they are North Carolina girls, because they basically grew up here.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I know you taught at 3 different universities, and so how many years total did you teach?
I taught 3 at Auburn and a couple 2 and then 2. So I taught about 7 years on the collegiate level. So
yeah. What do you miss it? What did you love most about teaching?
What did I love most about teaching? Oh, I really liked teaching and watching kids get it. Because I do, and really teaching at the elementary school was some of my best experience, because these were kids who English was their second language, but I expected a lot of them, and they always rose to the occasion. I know this is 5th grade, but I had the slow readers read a book about Robin Hood, but I had those I thought who could handle it. They read Little Women, and and they did okay. I also had them. One good thing I had them do, and this was great, I had them all write letters to pick countries and not countries. They wrote to different states and asked them, said, we're going to come visit you. And I put down, my address, so that the places, because I had a U.S. address, and then the company would bundle everything up and bring it down. And so then we had a big geography sort of bee or little thing where all the kids could present what they had learned about the different states, and every state wrote them back. So that was really good.
Oh, gosh, that's amazing. So I didn't know you also taught fifth graders. My mother was a teacher. That's why I asked, and she taught fifth graders and
Okay.
her entire career. So she
Well, I
loved
will. Yeah,
the
I
little
like
kids.
I like the fifth graders because I don't think you know what, when they had trouble down there, they had a woman who probably had ovarian cancer, a first grade teacher, and she had to stop, and they said, come in and substitute. Little first graders are just a little bit too wiggly for me. I like the fifth graders,
Oh,
and that. So, but yes.
well, that's great. That's great. I like that you were a teacher too. So you've always been an active person, Jo, and enjoying your life. And you've been really good about getting your checkups. And even with that, there was something that had gone undetected. And you said that you had noticed your stomach was hard and a little distended. I wanted you to share about that experience and some of your symptoms. What you what led you to start questioning what was going on? Because I know ovarian cancer is so hard to detect early.
It is definitely that is one of the main problems. Is usually a lot of people who have ovarian cancer, there's not a screening test, and so all the symptoms, and there are things that women will say, oh, I'm a little bloated, I'm distended. I mean, I really thought, because I was exercising, I mean, I was running 3 times a week, I had a spin class, I would go swimming, I have a rowing machine, and then we do our hiking. I said, well, I'm just going to be a little old lady with a pot belly. I mean, I just thought that, because you do see little old ladies with pot bellies.
Yeah.
And then I noticed above my stomach, I had a bulge above my belly button. And so I went to the doctor, and the doctor diagnosed it as a hernia. Well, it was not a hernia. It was cancer fluid, but I didn't find that out till later. So I had these 2 things going on. And the major one, and I said, well, I will talk about this when I go for my GYN checkup. I started having stress incontinence when I was running, and I knew that wasn't right. So I did talk to her, my doctor, Dr. Miller of the Cone System. She did the physical exam and said something feels off. She said, so we're going to send you in for some testing. So my appointment was on a Wednesday, May 4th, 5th, and then she sent me in on Thursday for a transvaginal ultrasound. She called me and she said, it still doesn't look right. Tomorrow you're going in for a CAT scan. So on Friday I went in for a CAT scan, and Monday morning she called me and she said, you have an appointment with Dr. Catherine Tucker at the Cancer Center on Tuesday. So from Wednesday to Tuesday, they found out I had cancer. And from what I have heard is for my doctor to detect it in a physical exam, she's a very good doctor. I mean, she's an excellent doctor. I credit her and Dr. Tucker with saving my life, because so many times when I've been in these survivor groups and different things, so many of them, it was like GI, oh, you're having GI issues or this, and they don't, well, I'll just say it. Sometimes people think women are just complaining, and they're not. You have to advocate for yourself. And that's what I thought. So I went in and saw Dr. Tucker, and she said, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to set you up, and you're going to have 3 chemos. Then we'll do surgery. Then you'll have 3 more chemos. So for the chemos, I would see Dr. Gorsuch. Now, another procedure they had me do was it's called paracentesis. I think that's the correct thing. But what they did is they sent me to the hospital, and they sort of put a tube in my stomach, and they drained all the cancer fluid out as much as they could get. And they got about 2 liters at that time. And I was diagnosed, I was stage 3C. And what it means, the difference between 3 and 4 is 3, it's still contained all in your abdomen. 4 is when the cancer has started affecting other organs, such as your bladder or your liver, or even up into your lungs. I mean, so that's what they did. So I started chemo 3 weeks, and they decided, I talked to Dr. Gorsuch, and she looked at my hands and she said, "Oh, you have good veins. We won't put a port in." So I didn't have a port, but I started three weeks after. Now, also, when they're doing this, there's a blood test that they do, but it doesn't always work for everybody. It's called the CA-125 cancer marker. But
yeah, I've heard that done.
They do those, and when I had 3 weeks of chemo, they called me in, Dr. Tucker did, to tell me that the chemo wasn't doing any good, because if the chemo is being effective, your numbers start to go down, and my numbers continued to go up. 0 to 38 is normal, and at last count mine was in the 900s. I mean, it started in 700, and we're doing chemo, and each week it's going up 100 points. So that was one way that they did. And so what she said is that we would wait. We had to wait for the chemo to get out of my system, and then we would do surgery and hope for the best. Now, she did tell me, she said, it's good because you're in shape and you're not overweight, so that will make it easier. And so on August 2nd, 2022, Dr. Tucker did surgery, and she found 5 tumors. 3 were fairly small. I might have had a few little ones in my omentum, which is an apron that covers your abdomen, sort of smooths you. But the 2 larger ones were on my ovaries, and one of those was slow-growing cancer. And then also they checked the lymph nodes, and they were fine. They also did genetic testing on me, and I didn't have any of the markers to have it. So this was just basically a random act of violence, but everything has worked out. I mean,
so they removed all 5 tumors, but they said you didn't have the gene that
I didn't have any of the genes or anything. No genetics. It was just like a fluke or just something random. And there is a young woman, a doctor, Dr. Victoria Bayjump, who's doing a lot of research, ovarian cancer research over in Chapel Hill. And she says, you just have to look at this cancer as being a random act of violence. Nothing you did caused it. And I do agree with that, because I'm a pescatarian. I eat fish, mainly plant-based. I eat a lot of, I don't eat meat, pork, chicken. I mean, before all this happened, I only went to the doctor for my checkups. Since this happened, I basically go to the doctor for my checkups. I just have a new checkup. I have a cancer checkup. But but I do think, and I've told people, I said, you got to get with the doctor you trust, and you work out a plan. And if the first plan doesn't work, well, we'll just get another plan, but we're going to stay positive, because I do think a positive attitude is very, very helpful and contributes to healing and to fighting off the disease.
I do too. Yeah. I agree with that. So when they had the first doctor that told you had a hernia, how can women, I mean, if a doctor told me that, I would just assume that's what I had, but You already had that upcoming appointment.
I know. And that's what, when I did, I said, Dr. Tucker, take care of that hernia when you were in there. And when she did that, she said, Jo, there wasn't a hernia. But it was good that she got, they got it, because that meant that fluid was going to continue up to my lungs, and I would have been diagnosed at 4 if it had continued on. So I was very lucky that I had my appointment with Dr. Miller. Now, the other doctor had made an appointment for me to see a surgeon, but they would have found it within a month, because that surgeon would have been able to determine that I didn't have a hernia. I had something else. So.
Right. Well, you said you had stress incontinence. Now, what is stress? And I know what incontinence is. What is stress?
It's because when you run and you're pounding on the pavement, it's making it go. And that was one thing they told me. They said my bladder was almost completely smushed shut from all the fluid. So my urine didn't have any place to go except out. So, but yeah, so that's what. And once they took care of that, I haven't had that problem, and I am back running. So
that's not a symptom of ovarian cancer.
It can be a symptom of ovarian cancer. Yes, it can. Okay. A lot of women will have abdominal pain. Some people have bleeding. Sometimes they quit eating, they're tired, they have constipation or changes in their bowel movements. Maybe a sudden or unexplained weight loss. And that is something I think doctors really need to pay attention more, because that could have been with me, because I had lost a little weight, but it was, not that bad. And since I was in the normal range, they probably thought, oh, this woman she looks okay, so they weren't gonna, and that. But yes, so, but that is, they say if any of those symptoms can continue for longer than a month, go to the doctor. I mean, the reason, I was already, I was still running and doing all these things, and I was stage 3C cancer, but I'm running 10 miles 3 times a week. But it's, it's just like, you don't think of that kind of person being sick. Yeah. So you just have to be aware. And I say people, and one thing women do that I try to tell them not to do it is, a lot of times when women go through menopause, they stop going to the GYN. And I say, no, keep going to the GYN and get checked out, because age is one of the contributing factors to developing cancer.
Right. Yeah. And the PSA, the CA 125, what's it called? I was doing that, and I haven't done that in a while. I was doing it every other year, and I know ultrasound in between, since my mother had died of it. But you said you can have platinum resistance. What is that?
Yeah, I had platinum resistance in the chemo. So what that basically meant, well, I was resistant to any good that the chemo did. Now, I spoke at a meeting a couple weeks ago about being a survivor. And there was a young nurse practitioner oncologist who spoke after I did. And after the whole meeting, she came up to me and said, Jo, they have developed some drugs for people who are platinum resistant. So that's good. I told her, I said, that's great in case I ever have a relapse, or for the people who are going through it right now. About 10 to 15% of all people who take chemo are platinum resistant. So, oh well. I'm glad that they're developing things all the time. I mean, it's great, the research.
Well, when you got the initial news, were you in shock? What was your initial reaction? Do you remember that? Or
well, I just said, this can't be happening. I mean, that's why I say you got to think of it as a random act of violence, because, oh, you're supposed to eat right and exercise, maintain a good body weight. I was the poster child for healthy living, but it didn't make any difference. So I was kind of in shock, and I thought about it and I said, it's going to be okay. I said, it will be okay. Now, in my head, I'm very, very positive, but I knew it would be okay even if I did end up passing away or dying. Just that. But I also thought in my head, no, I'm very stubborn. And I said, cancer is not going to take me down. I will freely admit that both my husband and my younger daughter were extremely upset because they got on and they looked at the statistics and all the information on the internet, Dr. Google, and basically I should have been dead in 6 months. So they were very upset. And I just said, no, we cannot have tears. We are going to be positive and we're going to get through this. Right. And we did.
Well, how did you and your husband and your daughter work together to stay positive? I know that you're already that way, but how did you help them stay that way? Because I know from going through it with my mom, we were all so scared.
I know they were scared, but they didn't ever let me know they were scared. And when I told them that, they basically, Sarah, God love her, she started trying to think of food that I would eat, and she's a vegan. So she was finding vegan meals that had 26 grams of protein. My Dr. Gorsuch always wants you to eat a lot of protein. So I was eating between 70 and 80 grams a day. And so they were trying to help me, even though sometimes from the chemo, the smells of food were not the best, but they just did. And we did as much as we could. I just said, it's going to be okay. I just kept telling them that it would be okay. And they visited me and they just, I don't know. It just, I think my being so positive just made them be positive. Yeah. And also, well, Sarah had a friend. And she was talking to her friend. It was, and I've been known to be a little bit of a daredevil, but we were rafting down the Colorado in the Grand Canyon, and it had been really rainy. There had been lots of flash floodings. Well, I fell and I broke my wrist. And they go, well, do you want to be flown out? And I said, no. So I said, just wrap my arm up and we'll be okay. I mean, we didn't know it was broken. They were hoping it wasn't. But I stayed at the bottom of the canyon for a week. And when we got out, I went and got it x-rayed and it was broken. And I ended up having surgery. And that's what her friend said. She said, your mother is so tough. She'll be okay. I'm just, and I had an old boss one time who looked at me and he told me, he said, you are very interesting. He said, if you have a problem and it's like a wall and you come to it and you can't get through it, he says, you don't get upset. He said, you just back out and you look at it again to see if there's a way to get around it. So I guess I'm a positive problem solver.
That's a good way to be. Now, when you were doing the chemo, I'm curious because my mother's experience was just complete. I mean, did you, like, I never understood why my mother was so out of it. Like, that entire year she lived, like she didn't know where she was or anything. Did you go through that, or did you? I mean, no. Did you lose your hair? Did you get really out of it?
Yes, I lost my hair. Tamarah, my hair was like yours, long and blonde.
Really?
Yes, I had long blonde hair. Didn't have any gray yet, but I went bald, and I did have problems, vomit with nausea and not wanting to eat. One thing they probably had us do that your mother didn't do is for neuropathy, people tend to develop neuropathy from chemo. And so what they would have us do is we had to keep our hands and feet in ice the entire time we were having the chemo. So maybe that made us focus on something else. I mean, I didn't have, I've had friends whom I met in the support group who were able to continue walking and exercising. But by the third chemo, I wasn't really wanting to exercise a whole lot. I mean, I did keep it up between the first and the second one, but it was more of a cumulative effect. And I don't know how many chemos your mom had, but that could have been part of the problem if she just kept having more and more chemo. And I did have one person who said that the chemo had made her brain really foggy. So
yeah. Well, maybe that's what it was. I can't even remember now. It's been so long, but my siblings probably remember. But it was just so horrible. Were you? I mean, because she was in the hospital a lot. She'd come home for a little bit, but then back in a home or the hospital. Did you mostly do everything just outpatient and be at home?
I did everything as outpatient. Now they do have some new procedures with it, but I opted not to do that. They have one procedure which wouldn't have worked on me, but where they go and they put the chemo in you and it stays for a while, and then you have to stay in the hospital for 2 weeks. But I said no, I would go the route that Dr. and I had set up.
Yeah. Well, where are you now as far as, do they consider you in remission? Is that what it's?
No, I guess I'm considered sort of as being managed, because once they determined that I was platinum resistant, basically they said, we cannot cure you, but, and here, just treat it like a chronic illness and my checkups. So I started having 3-month checkups, then I went to 4-month checkups, and now I'm at 5, maybe 5.5. My next visit will be in May. So, but it is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, how did you, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, when you were going through I mean, I'm just amazed at how positive you would remain, especially during the chemo part. Where would you say you found your strength? Like to just was it just family, friends, or you just?
I think it was family and friends. Yes. I mean, I have some really good friends who would just show up at my house just to check on me. I mean, you can see that I'm in the library, and I would spend a lot of time in this library reading, and people could come to the door and check on me. I mean, bring me flowers, just, I had a lot of support from my immediate family and my friends. I mean, I also, at that time, I think they were having, it was 2022, but they didn't have all their support groups up and running at the cancer center. And one of my young friends who works in furniture, she said, Jo, there's a person who works at our company who has ovarian cancer. And I have asked her if you could call her. So I did. I called this woman, Julie Carrols Johnson, who lives in Minnesota. And she had stage 4 cancer when she was diagnosed. And we have become friends. We have visited them in Minnesota. But she was, she was the first person I talked to who had ovarian cancer. And because, that ovarian cancer, it's known as the silent killer, because basically 60% of the women who are diagnosed do end up dying. But it's just, you just got to find somebody else. And I thought her story was so great, because when she told me her story, her first husband had died unexpectedly at age 47. And 6 years later, she was getting ready to marry again, and her diagnosis came 2 weeks before her wedding. And her husband is a prince. He went through the whole thing with her. And she said she was stage 4. She was in clinical trials at Mayo. And she said, I fought so hard for my children. She had 2 children. She said, because I wasn't going to leave them.
Is she still alive?
She is still alive. Her son just got married last weekend. And she sent me pictures.
How long has she been diagnosed?
She was diagnosed about a year before I was. So.
Oh, so yeah. That's amazing that she's still here.
She is. She is.
And she gets her checkups.
I don't think she's on any medicine. She has scans. A lot of people have scans, and since the marker is a big way they can tell if I'm having problems, I just do the blood test. But a lot of people have scans. And that's the other thing I wanted to tell you is I had, the tumors, and they were fairly large. But a lot of people, their cancer is more granular and more like seeds of sand. And so they have to treat each woman, her cancer is her cancer, unique and individual to her.
Right. Yeah. So. I know my mother's tumor, they said, was the size of a grapefruit. They removed it, but she only lived a year. So, but who would you say you leaned on the most over the last 3 years?
I would say it was Phil, my husband. Yeah. I have to watch him now though, because if I say, I was reading Our State, and I said, they have a nice Christmas lighting. Next thing I know, Phil has got tickets for us to go to the Christmas lighting. I mean, and then it trips. If I say, that would be nice, Phil's like, okay, let's do it. Oh, you want that? It's like, Phil. But as he said, you introduced mortality into our lives, but we're going to, It did. It makes when you do have a serious illness, you do realize that you don't have as an infinite numbers of days. So you got to live your life. You got to be grateful for what you have, and you've got to be kind to other people and stay positive.
Yeah, you do. And I want to say when you came to my studio to do the photos for the magazine, when I write the story in there, I was telling you, you danced the whole time to the music that I was playing. You seemed so happy, and that was really uplifting, to see all that positivity when you've been through so much.
Well, you've got to be positive and be thankful for what you have.
Yeah, you really do. And you've gotten very involved in She Rocks, and you have that monthly support group. Is that
yes. About She Rocks? Well, yes. She Rocks is a nonprofit, and what they do is they help to fund the research going on over at Chapel Hill. But another thing that they do is that they partner with the Elite Care at the Cancer Center to help women who are going through all of the GYN cancers, mainly ovarian, but they will pay for people to get there. They have funded 2 retreats, and they raise money. They are very, very giving, generous of their time. I am in awe of these women. The women here in Greensboro who started the organization, because it started in Wilmington, but the ones here, there was a friend of theirs, Marie, who was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She is no longer here, but they have kept it. She's the one who got it started. Somebody with ovarian cancer was the one who got the she-rocks, and her friends joined together with her, and they have continued to want to get the word out there so that other women have the opportunity to survive. And it's for every woman you know and love. They need to be aware.
Yeah. So you said they may be needing some more help.
They always need help. They always need help. They can get in touch with the information at the bottom, the sherocks.org, but there are always volunteer opportunities. We have been at the health fair at AT&T. There are businesses such as Kendra Scott and Simply Megs and Pebble and Pear who will hold events. There are some, I know some of the Pilates groups and others have held fundraisers. We have a fashion show, which you came to.
Yeah, that's how I met you.
Yes. Yeah. Which is a lot of fun. I mean, but yes. And basically, if anybody, if they want us to come and talk about it, basically what we do is you have your group, and then there will be a representative from She-Rocks to talk about the organization, get a survivor to talk, and then they also will have a medical professional there to talk. And so just to spread the word so that more and more people know what to look for, so that we don't have to lose more women or more relatives like your mother.
Oh yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah, so that's good. Yeah, I'm glad that they started a chapter here, and it sounds like you're back to hiking and your exercise, and you've got a big trip planned to New Zealand.
Yep, and yes, going to Alaska in June. I mean, so yes, gonna go sailing in Alaska, so that'll be good.
And you're celebrating 5 years in 2027, right? In New Zealand.
Yes. We will go to New Zealand when it's 5 years. That'll be great. I'm staying positive, making plans.
I know, that's what you got to do. What would you say to someone who might be watching this interview, Jo, who is going through a similar experience with ovarian cancer or just got diagnosed? Or
I would say, if you just got diagnosed or if you're going through this, stay positive, talk to your doctors, and please come to these support groups that Wesley Long, the Cancer Center, offers. They're the fourth Monday of the month. So they are so helpful. We have become a fairly close-knit group, the ones of us who have continued going. And sometimes there's they have different professionals. We've had a nutritionist, a radiation oncologist, a geneticist, and then other times we just go in and talk about what's going on,
Yeah. Well, that sounds
and we're always welcoming of new people, so it's great.
I'm glad. Well, I want to thank you, Jo, for being here today. It's really been great talking to you. Is there anything that you want to mention that we didn't go over?
Well, the one thing I was going to mention is that yesterday I had a 5-month checkup, and there was no evidence from the physical exam. And this morning I got my CA 125 results, and it was 13.5. So I am still normal. So I'm just going to keep moving forward, keep smiling, and just living life.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that you're continually getting good reports, and mostly that you're continuing living your life and enjoying it. You're such a positive person.
Well, we all need a little positivity. Even when bad things happen, things could be worse.
I
So
know.
let's be thankful for what we have and keep smiling.
That's great. Well, I want to thank the viewers for their support and make sure you share this replay on your social media sites. Stay tuned to more live interviews in Tamarah's Closet, and I hope I'll have some more survivors on the show in the future. You can donate to She Rocks at www.she-rocks.org. So, to your own success and health, keep on rocking it, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye.